I'm going to demonstrate a technique to achieve a realistic change of eye color. I'm going to do this from brown eyes to blue eyes, and also going to show you on a picture of somebody with blue eyes going back to brown eyes. What we've got here is we've got a picture of a girl here with brown eyes. So the first thing we need to do is we need to select the brown areas of her eyes. So what I'm going to do is hold down Control Space to bring up my zoom tool, and I'm going to zoom in on her eyes a little bit further. Okay, hold down space to click and drag to shift that around a bit. Now I'm going to click and hold the marquee tool and choose the elliptical marquee tool. Next thing I want to do is I want to make sure the feather radius is at about 3 pixels. This will mean that the edge of the selection is a little bit blurred, so that we can cater for the fact that the edge of the selection won't be perfectly clear. We also want to make sure anti-alias is on, because if we do this, then we make sure that that's a little bit smooth. That selection's a little bit smoother again. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on her left eye. So here we go. Now what I want to do first is just select roughly her eye area. Now I could do that by clicking and selecting from the left, which works pretty well in this case. I can then click and drag the selection. Now I've got that. The next thing I want to do is select her other pupil. So note that this tutorial makes the assumption that you have a basic understanding of the selection tools. So if you don't, just have a look through graphicsdistrict.com and take a look at some of the selections tutorials to give yourself a bit of a background on that. So now I'm going to hold down Shift. This will add to the selection, and I'm going to click and drag to grab the iris portion of her other eye. Now I've missed a part just up at the top here, so I'm just going to continue holding Shift so I can add to the selection a little bit more. And down here just a touch. Because we've got the feather on, the edges blend together quite nicely. Oops, that's not right. Okay, so we've got roughly her eye area selected that we want to change. So the next step is to go up to the Image menu, and from there choose Adjustments. And from there, we want to choose Selective Color. Now, Selective Color lets you operate on the individual color values within the selected area. So in this case, because she's got brown eyes and blue eyes are generally a little bit lighter in color, what we want to do is go down, choose the blacks. As you notice in this menu, there are various different colors to choose from. If we choose the blacks, that means that our adjustments are going to operate on the areas of the image that have blacks in them, so within the selection. So I'm going to choose that. Now notice if I do that, it's grabbing her pupil area, so that's actually not what we want to select. What we should do is grab the neutral areas, which are going to be the areas in between. So I'll just do that. Neutrals. As you can see, as I pull the slider up or down, it darkens the iris area, because within the selection, those colored areas in the iris are the more neutral areas. So I'm adjusting that down to about minus 20%. And that's about right. Let's go and choose the blacks. Just so we can fix up the pupils and make sure they stay nice and dark. Now you'll notice the whole iris areas of her eyes are now somewhat lighter, but they don't yet look unrealistic, as some of the basic methods that you might know would cause to happen. So now that we've got this, her eyes are still brown, but now they're a little bit lighter. So I'm going to click OK. Now we use from the Image menu, and then Adjustments, and then Hue and Saturation. Now all I have to do is adjust the hue. The hue is which particular main color value we're pointing out, to or over in the blue area. Now, as you know, I have never met anybody with eyes quite that blue, so in order to achieve a slightly more realistic color, I'm going to pull the saturation down a little bit. This will shift it closer to black and white, but I'm going to do that all the way to about that area. Is probably, what have I got there, about minus 60. Now I'll click OK. Now I'm going to deselect. You can do that from the Select menu. I just press Control D most of the time. There we go. Notice her eyes are now a realistic blue. So there you go. Okay, so we're switching over to the other image now. I'll just minimize this one. Now this is a girl who's got clearly natural blue eyes. I'm just going to zoom in a bit on that. As you can see, her eyes are very clearly blue. So what you'll notice is because of the fact they're blue, that means they're somewhat lighter than a person with brown eyes would have. So what we need to do first is darken up those eyes without making it look unrealistic. So the first thing to do, of course, is to select those areas, just like we did with the first image. I'm going to move that around, add to my selection as I go by holding down the Shift key. Remembering, of course, that we've still got that feather radius of 3 pixels and anti-alias selected. Now I'll just do the other eye. Notice, of course, that I'm not letting that particular selection disappear. I'm just adding to the selection. And that's about right. Great, so we've got those selected. Now, the next thing we want to do is, just like with the first image, we want to play with selective color. Remember, that's in the image menu under adjustments. So I'm going to choose that now. Now, with this particular image, what we would probably want to do is we'll have a quick go at the neutrals. So I'm going to choose neutrals from that menu, and I'm going to muck about with that. There we go. That's working well already. Now what we want to do also is we probably want to have a bit of a play with the blacks, because what you want to do is when you play with these colors using selective color, you want to make sure that you adjust several areas, because what happens is otherwise you move the colors too closely together and it can start to look a little bit unrealistic. So it's good to try and adjust several of the different shades across the board, just so they move in contrast with each other. So I've done that now. Now another thing I'm going to do, just for a bit of a quick adjustment, is I'm going to play with the brightness and contrast. Now, as you can see, they're both set to 0 at the moment, so I'm going to pull the brightness down just a touch, and let's see what we can do with the contrast. I'm going to pull the contrast up just a little bit, because as we've been pulling things down, those reflected areas in our eyes have started to darken up a bit, and as you know, reflections generally aren't dark, so that contrast will help bring that out again. That should be about right. Okay, and then finally, from adjustments again, I'm going to play with hue saturation, just like I did in the last one. I'm going to shift that over to a brown area. Now, just like with the first one, because we've shifted that over to a color that it wasn't originally, it looks a little bit too bright and colorful. So what I'll do, just like before, is I'll pull the saturation down till it looks more realistic. So I think probably about that area looks about fine. Now I'm going to deselect and zoom out, and there we go. She has brown eyes and it looks pretty realistic.